What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel, Joy Speaks, a channel that I created to provide a voice for the recovery community. And when I say recovery community, I'm referring to people who are struggling with substance abuse, alcohol, mental health issues, and their loved ones. Because as we know, it's not just the addict or the alcoholic who's affected, but also the community that surrounds them. Before I get started, I want to ask a big favor. Please hit like, hit share, and most importantly, hit subscribe. Hitting subscribe will cost you absolutely nothing. All that will happen is you will have access to everything I have going on with my channel. And if you hit the notifications button, you'll be notified every time I put out some fresh content. So thank you to everybody who have subscribed so far. Thank you for your participation and thank you for the engagement. And today I am back with another story time. This story time is going to kind of dive into a little bit of my past and give you guys a little bit more insight around some of the things that led up to my active addiction. There is no guarantee that someone will be an addict or an alcoholic. There's really no way to predict that. But there are two things that kind of create more likeliness for you to become an addict or an alcoholic. And those two things are genetic predisposition. So if your mom or if your dad or if your grandparents are addicts or alcoholics, chances are you are more likely to become an addict or an alcoholic. But once again, it does not guarantee that you will become one. The second marker is childhood trauma. So people who have suffered childhood trauma are more likely to become addicts or alcoholics. Once again, this is also not a guarantee. There are people who have, overcome and experienced childhood trauma and still did not become substance abuse addicts. So, in my case, I do have some history in my family of alcoholism, and I definitely encountered and endured my fair share of childhood trauma. Not going to get into all of that in this particular video, but I am going to talk about something that I think is very, very important amongst the community, amongst the African American community, particularly amongst males in the African American community. And that is the association between performing arts and sexuality. Now, the reality is that someone's personal interests, someone's artistic interests do not dictate or don't even really correlate with someone's sexual preference. However, when I grew up and when I was growing up and in that time, you were pretty much not allowed to be a performer, to be a dancer, to be anything artistic. You are expected to, be into race cars or sports, or maybe even a rapper. And if I'm honest, I feel like, as negative as gangbanging is, I feel like when I was growing up, even gangbanging was more accepted than, being a performer. And kids can be brutal. Kids can be very, very, very brutal. Thankfully, the society has come a long way from, when I was growing up. But, my reality is that I dealt with a lot of shame. I dealt with an overwhelming amount of shame. And a lot of that shame was kind of centered in who I was as a person. So I'm going to take it back all the way back to when I was in third grade. So that had to be like 1998, I believe. Yeah, in the late 90s. And so there was an opportunity for me to audition for a school talent show. I had always loved to dance. Before I can even really remember talking, I remember dancing. It's something that has always come natural to me. It's something that I've always enjoyed, and it's also something that has been inspiring to me. Something about moving with the music speaks to my soul, and it's been that way ever since I can remember. And I remember hearing about a talent show, and I had the opportunity to audition for the talent show. And I remember being very nervous. I was also a child actor, so I had some familiarity with auditioning. And so I auditioned. and I ended up getting into the talent show. And what I auditioned with was a hip hop kind of freestyle original choreography piece. And it was to a really, really upbeat Whitney Houston song. Um, and I'm not going to get into the specifics because I think that might get me in trouble with copyright. But anyway, I auditioned and I got into the show. And I was super excited to perform. Um, I had very few close friends in elementary school. I had a couple people that were just kind of my partners in crime, right? But I by no means was like a popular kid. At least not in elementary school, I wasn't. Um, and so the night comes for me to perform in front of my peers, in front of the parents, in front of the entire school and student body, one evening, right? And so I remember being on stage, and I remember the curtains being closed, and I remember I had been practicing and rehearsing, and so I felt confident, but I was also very nervous. I was very scared to kind of just be super exposed in front of the entire auditorium. And I remember the lights going out, and then I remember, the music starting, the curtains opening, and there's this thing that happens with me when I'm performing on stage where I just kind of leave my body. And I also truly think there's a spiritual connection that also happens when I'm performing live on stage. And I remember just letting it all out on that auditorium stage. And before I knew it, I was done. And there's standing ovations, there's rounds of applause, there's all this positive energy kind of being thrown back at me. And I remember thinking, finally, I found my thing. Finally, I found a way to feel accepted and to feel validated in who I am. Um, Finally, I feel love, maybe. Um, that's what that feels like, especially standing alone on the stage with, all this adoration and positive energy just kind of being thrown back at me. It was incredible. It was incredible. And it was probably my first real sense of escapism because it felt euphoric. It felt amazing. And I was so excited. I was so excited. And then I was even more excited to kind of go back to school the next day, right? Because I was assuming that once I got back to school the next day that, there would be more positive energy thrown my way. But unfortunately, that was not the case. Uh, I remember walking into class, and I remember hearing people whisper, particularly other boys, whisper and laughing, right? And then I remember someone walking up to me and saying, "Weren't you in the talent show last night?" And I said, "Yeah." And I was getting ready. I was anticipating, like, maybe a congratulations. But then the person said, "Well, you're a gay Bob." And I remember thinking, like, I remember being very, very, very confused, right? Because I'm like, a gay Bob. And then, other kids start laughing. And then, fast forward a little bit to recess time. I remember being on the yard and these kids calling me a sissy. They were talking about my performance, and all I kept hearing was gay, 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 gay. And so, at that time in my life, I was very shy, very introverted, and so I cried. And so what do kids do? When they see another boy crying, well, they make them cry even more. So if I was at all emasculated, by my performance, I was even more emasculated by my response to the bullying. And it ate me up. it ate me up. And I just remember crying and crying. And I remember getting picked up from school the next day. Um, and being picked up from school that same day, and, just tears flooding down my eyes. And I remember my grandmother asking me, like, what's wrong? Like, why are you crying? And I said, because the kids keep calling me gay. These kids keep calling me gay. They were making fun of me for my performance. And, God bless my grandmother, because she was my forever safe space. And, she did everything in her power to let me know that I could dance and I could perform and I could be, whoever I wanted to be, and that those kids were jealous. But, being a third grader and, being called those kinds of names, and then being told that they're jealous, it's hard to kind of conceptualize that as an 8-year-old kid. It's hard to put those pieces together, that someone would make fun of you because they're jealous of you. And then I also just didn't understand the connection. I didn't understand why me dancing made me gay. I I just didn't get it. I didn't understand it. And so I'm not gonna lie, like damn near every single day, of the rest of that school year, I was being made fun of. I remember trying to get on the basketball court and play basketball with some of the guys, and no one picked me. No one wanted me to be around because I was the gay Bob. Um, and so what that does is that breaks your spirit. As a young man who's trying to get in touch with some of his God-given gifts and talents, and then to try to express and share those talents with the world, only to be ridiculed and made fun of, it makes you want to hide. It makes you want to, cover yourself up and escape. And what that started for me was, it started this process of having to put on these masks, having to hide who I was, hide my gifts, hide my talents, because I didn't want to be made fun of. I just didn't understand. And to be honest, I still don't understand. I still don't understand the direct, correlation that society sees between someone performing and someone's sexuality. I just don't get it. But I learned from a very young age that it was not okay for me to dance, and it was not okay for me to express myself. It was okay for me to do in the safety of a confined space at my house, at my home. My grandmother always promoted and got excited to ask me to perform, at family functions, and so I was safe there at my grandmother's house. But pretty much anywhere else, including a lot of times in my own home, because I had a father who was incredibly homophobic and violent and aggressive. From almost every direction, I was being told that something inside of me was wrong. And so these are the seeds that are planted at a very young age of shame, and secrecy and confusion. And so, it's no surprise to me that the moment I had an opportunity years down the line to check out and numb my feelings away, I ran at that opportunity, because I had a lot of shame inside that I just did not know how to deal with. And frankly, like I didn't actively pursue dance the way that I could have, because of the fear of society. Because I had already had a very clear example of what happens when I try to share this gift with the world, and I get hate for it. I get called a sissy, a gay, just for dancing. So why would I be excited or curious to explore more of what that looks like, when it brings me so much shame and discomfort from the outside world? And so not too far after that, just a few years after that, I ended up booking a national commercial where I had to audition. And the audition was they played. I want to say the name of the song, but I don't want to. I don't want to get in trouble for copyright. But it was a very, very, very popular pop song about the dogs being out. You know that song. Um, and so I auditioned and they booked me. And I got to go into a recording studio and record a cover of a very popular song. And then we learned some choreography and we performed the choreography to the music and we shot it. And the commercial played and played and played. And before I knew it, everybody saw that I was in a commercial dancing. Now, here's the juxtaposition once again, right? So I am getting positive feedback from casting directors, from the people on set for my talents, right? I'm getting positive feedback from my grandmother, who is so excited that her grandbaby booked a commercial dancing and singing. And once I got back to school and the word got around, here and now at this point I'm a sixth grader, I'm in middle school, and it's the same story. It's you're a faggot, you're a sissy, you're a gay bob, right? And so I spent a lot of my years, especially in elementary school, just crying and crying and crying and crying. But by the time I got into middle school, I started to become angry. I started to become very, very angry and very, very resentful because I had full awareness that my gifts and my talents are not going away. But I was also, once again, so confused by society kind of reaffirming that because I like to perform, that meant that I was gay. I just, it was frustrating. It was frustrating because you got people who are talented in basketball. You have men who are talented in basketball. You have men who are talented in football. You have men who are talented playing instruments even. And they weren't getting the same negative hate that I was getting. And so it pissed me off. It pissed me off. It told me once again that I had to kind of bury who I was and what I like to do. And I had to try to become someone else because the society kept reaffirming that something inside of me was inherently broken because I like to perform and because I was good at it. That has to stop. That really, really has to stop because this is a perpetuated cycle of shame, of secrecy, which leads to confusion, which leads to depression, and which ultimately can lead to addiction. And that third grade talent show, of me expressing myself, through performing arts, and then that negative feedback, then fast forward to sixth grade, being in a national commercial, dancing and singing, and then getting that negative feedback. It was nonstop. It was nonstop. Every time I felt like I could be proud of the gifts that God had given me, I was told otherwise by society, and it really didn't help to be told the very same thing from my father. So there's this underlying theme of toxic masculinity that, in my opinion, is causing a generation of people a lot of sadness, a lot of shame, and I'm not gonna lie, I struggled with, you know, ideals of unaliving myself. I struggled a lot with that because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And frankly, it gets frustrating when you just want to exist in the world just like everybody else is and be accepted and be appreciated and then somehow be validated, but you can't. You can't. And then you're given this label at third grade. I don't even understand. I know for a fact in third grade, I wasn't thinking about having sex, with anything. with anyone. So this labeling, this title of being gay in association with performing arts is insane. It's insane. And you know, for the fathers out there who are raising young men, if your son is interested in performing arts, please support him. Please validate him. Please let him know that he can perform, he can dance, he can sing, and that he will be loved regardless. Because there's probably a lot of men out there who are very, very talented in performing arts, but who live in fear and shame around expressing it. So fathers raising men, please love your kid, love your son, no matter what he likes to do, because that can change the course of the rest of his life. You know, and for everybody else out there, you know, let people figure out their sexual journey without your input. It's hard enough trying to figure it out as it is. We don't need all these negative opinions around someone else's bedroom behavior. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. And frankly, if you're thinking as a man, if you are that preoccupied with what another man is doing behind the bed, I think that means you need to take a deeper look at yourself. Because a man who is secure within who he is and who he sleeps with will not be bothered or will not care about what the next man is doing. Also, if you have any bit of sense, just a little bit of sense, you will understand that someone's performing arts capabilities and desires has absolutely nothing with who they decide to sleep with. So can we keep those things separate? Please. Can we keep those things separate? They don't have anything to do with each other, right? And these are the conversations that need to be had. These are the conversations, especially around African-American men, that need to be had. Because I sit in the barbershop and I hear a lot of toxic masculinity. And these same ideals that happened in the late 90s when I was in third grade, they are still being perpetuated today in 2024. As a matter of fact, now they're a little bit more outspoken. Okay? It's toxic. And frankly, it can kill people. It can cause so much shame and so much confusion and so much sadness for a young man trying to figure out his life that there are situations where the people just give up. You know, so let's spread a little bit more awareness around, you know, accepting people for who they are. And let's spread more awareness around the separation between someone's performing capabilities and their sexual preference. They are not the same. I hope that, you know, I said something today that is a little bit thought-provoking, a little bit inspiring. You know, like I said, I did not become an addict, you know, because of, you know, being bullied. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that years and years of being bullied made it a lot more likely for me to want to pick up a substance that allowed me to numb my feelings away, to check the heck out and be somebody that I'm not. You know, so if we have the freedom to express ourselves, chances are we'd be less inclined to numb our feelings away. Do me a favor, guys, hit the like button, hit share, and hit subscribe. Also, leave me a comment if there's a topic or a subject that you want to discuss, or maybe you want to hear me talk more about. Please, I am 1000% open and receptive to your ideas and your suggestions. Thanks again. Once again, hit like, hit share, hit subscribe, hit the notifications button. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.